Sandra. Welcome back on the Scenic Grow podcast.
Thank you for having me back. And I'm gonna try not to, as I said, I think I asked you if I can swear and cuss on the podcast, but I'll try to keep it PG.
Yeah, like maybe disclaimer if you're around little ones, just grab your headphones now. We're not open to complaints. We're not. We're just gonna talk as we talk, and this might include the occasional swear word. And that's not news if you're a regular here. So, okay, so I jotted down so many questions for you, but basically right now I don't know if your social media feed looks anything like mine. I don't know. You would think every woman over 35 has like some sort of hormonal crisis going on that can only be solved by like a very expensive supplement subscription.
Of course.
And this new buzzword of the wellness industry that is perimenopause is really going around town. And I feel like I'm always like one button click, like one Apple Pay Face ID away from buying like a really expensive miracle supplement. So, what is going on with perimenopause? Sandra, like enlighten us, please.
Look, perimenopause is an absolutely legit term. The issue is we are starting to see a lot of these terms pop on the wellness trends bandwagon. So, I mean, menopause is something that we're hearing left, right, and center, which is fantastic. I mean, we need to have these conversations. I think that's the beauty about having more and more funding when it comes to female health.
Hmm.
So I'm all for having these conversations. But, and as with everything, it turns trendy and hip to talk about it because there's money to be made. I mean, every wellness unicorn right now, you've got hormone coaches popping up left, right, and center. I didn't even know this was a thing because, again, if you're a hormone specialist, you are either an endocrinologist or a gynecologist. Um, Now the issue is, and we can talk about that too, is that yes, there's a ton of issues within the medical field, absolutely, especially when it comes to female health. We have been dismissed, disregarded. It's all in your head. We're not taken seriously.
Have you tried yoga?
Gaslighting, absolutely. I mean, have you meditated? So I understand when you don't feel heard, you are going to go on the lookout for other alternatives.
Hmm.
And I'm sure someone out there is going to give you the
Yeah, it's
solution.
capitalizing on this.
Exactly. Exactly. So the issue with it, I mean, people always, dub pharma, big pharma or the medical field as like some sort of, um, you know, people just wanting to prescribe medications left, right, and center. But actually, if you look at the wellness industry and like to call it big wellness, look at how much money is being made
Hmm.
out of people who are vulnerable, desperate, and don't have any answers.
Hmm.
Now, going back to this whole area of perimenopause, now, by definition, it is the transitional period before menopause when our hormones, primary hormones, estrogen and progesterone, naturally start to decline, leading to hormonal fluctuations. Now, it can start anywhere within your late 30s. Typically, it's your 40s, but it can really start quite early. I would say mid 30s, and it can last anywhere from a few months to over a decade. Exactly, until we arrive to the menopause.
Mm.
Um, Tell me, you have a
Yeah.
question.
No, yeah, like it's a part of a big, and I've loved that you mentioned a big part of why it's confusing and all is because it's like all everything concerning women's health is critically underfunded. But at the same time, it's this big period we can be in perimenopause, and there are a whole myriad of symptoms that are different for each and every one of us. So,
Exactly.
like, could we highlight like a few symptoms that are more common and when yeah could like is there can we do like like is it possible to cluster symptoms of like this is like what a lot of women experience?
So we are starting to see the most common complaints,
Mm.
right? So starting off with night sweats and hot flushes and sleep disturbances.
Yeah, I feel like I need to have
Um,
like a cart, like, yes,
this is
yes.
one that I mean, these are very, very common complaints that start off in your late 30s, early 40s. I'm starting to experience that too. The second thing is irregular periods. Now, one thing that you do notice, again, look, I've tracked different elements of my health throughout a 3-year period. It was really interesting to see when I did track my cycle that my average cycle is actually getting shorter and shorter. So, like my average
Mhm.
cycle, again, everyone's different. And also, it makes a difference if you're on any birth control. But in, let's say, using myself as an example, so my average cycle was around 29 to 30 days. Now it's about 25. And this is over a 3-year period. I just turned 39. So I'm not far off from, starting to experience all these changes.
Mhm.
So that's when it comes to your menstrual cycle, mood changes, things that we actually start to see is like low libido and vaginal dryness. This is also a very common complaint, but not a lot of women talk about.
Mm.
I see a lot of bloating and gut issues start around that
Mm.
period too. So around, let's say, early to mid 40s. Again, this is anecdotal, but you can start to group or cluster these symptoms
Yeah.
around, let's say within this age group.
Mm.
Um, Look, and brain fog is another thing. I mean, I've been blaming brain fog on
Yeah, first
on
it was like the new mom
pregnancy.
brain fog, and now it's smoothly transitioned into perimenopause brain fog, and I feel it's just gonna stick with me for the rest of my life.
Do you know what? And I think it's not how do you say I don't want to make it pathological. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we are pathologizing. I don't know if that's
Hmm.
even a word. A
Mm.
lot of these symptoms where it's a matter of being more confident and understanding, okay, what do I need to do to cope? What do I need to do to manage, for example, if I am experiencing any gut disturbances throughout this time? So this is where I would say, look, it's rather than pathologizing, let's start to understand our bodies a little bit better because we don't I haven't learned about perimenopause or the menopause in high school or not until in my 20s basically, or like obviously briefly when I was at university studying dietetics, nutrition and dietetics. But we are starting to see more and more and more research come out, and also more I'm not going to say concrete because hormones are extremely complex, right? We are complex creatures. We're an
Hmm.
ever evolving mystery to everyone. But I think
Bitch,
we
we
are
deep.
but you know what? I think this is where it's really
Mm.
about empowering yourself to start understanding your body a little
Yeah.
bit better and just knowing, okay, when is this a concern? When should I start worrying? Now, the
Mm.
reason why we can't really diagnose perimenopause is because our hormone levels do fluctuate day to day. And doctors can't really pinpoint exact changes. So sometimes lab tests or testing your hormones aren't always conclusive unless it's medically justified or required by your gynecologist or endocrinologist. So a lot of the times during this period, I would say it's more of a symptom-based diagnosis. So
Mhm.
it's really guided by your symptoms, obviously within the scope of ruling out other things as well.
Yeah.
Um, this is kind of the most common changes and the most common difficulties what everyone encounters because when you start experiencing all these things, you just want someone to give you an answer. Tell me what's wrong with me.
Yeah, so I can go fix.
Exactly. And I feel like this is where big wellness comes in and really starts taking advantage of women who are extremely insecure or just unsure
Mm.
about what's going on.
Yeah. I feel we've like from the targeted ads that I get, I feel we have left out one kind of like bucket of those symptoms clusters is metabolic changes, right? Like I see, dear Lord, my TikTok feed is full of like slowing metabolism, do this, like change in fat distribution, do this, more belly fat, do that. Like, is there like a base for this, or is it just fear mongering?
I would say, look, it's definitely a mix of both because generally as we age, there are slight changes to our metabolism, but not drastic enough to kind of to cause complete absolute havoc within the system. I mean, yes, with certain changes, I mean, you have to look at yourselves as a whole. It's not just the metabolic changes, but
Mm-hmm.
also when it comes to a change in hormones, especially with declining estrogen levels, you are more likely to become at risk of osteoporosis. So your bone health is at risk here. So, I mean, again, maybe I'm probably going off track a little bit, but to gather my thoughts, when you look at what really does impact metabolism that's completely out of our control is
Mm-hmm.
sex. So we do know that females generally have a slower metabolism than men. Age and genetics, we have no control over that. What we do have control over are a lot of the other lifestyle implications.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is um, training, movement, exercise. The other thing is, as we get older as well, what we do notice is that our appetite changes. So you do notice that, females and, and men as well, as they get older, especially if you're like in your late 70s, early 80s, they don't have much of an appetite anyway. So there are appetite changes that happen that can, again, impact your metabolism too. So you're not eating as much, things kind of slow down, your body goes into conservation mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, like, again, to kind of give you a simple answer, yes and no. I definitely think there's a lot of fear mongering there because they're potentially trying to sell you a dietary plan, lose belly fat within 6 weeks or whatever it is.
As
But
if you could target specific
I
pointed fat
can't,
loss
but
anyway, which you
exactly.
cannot. But
Exactly.
yeah.
So in terms of like, yes, we do notice that as we get older as females, sometimes, where do we generally deposit fat? I mean, around the belly area. That's one of the common ones within, your mid 40s, early 50s. A lot of women will come complaining about why am I, can I lose my belly fat? I was like, I can't target these areas. I think at the end of the day, it's really looking about what do we know has an impact in terms of lifestyle changes and tweaks that you need to do within
Mm.
this age group. And we can talk about that too when we talk about nutrients, but also about exercise and different types of exercise that we need to be doing as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Okay. Yes. So I let's go into that. But first, I really think, yeah, you highlighted like some super really important points. And one is, and maybe I really encourage you listening in due to this too. Like you have to know yourself, like track yourself, whatever you feel comfortable tracking, right? So you know the changes that are happening and you're less, I don't know, less likely to fall prey to charlatans selling you whatever. And also, because most of us, I know I have not been taught any of this in school. I know most of my friends have not been taught like the role of a progesterone in female bodies or estrogen in female body, like basic stuff.
Yeah.
So just really be curious, read a book and be like, hey, what does it actually do? So I can piece together if whatever this person is telling me, does it actually make sense or not? And it's so hard.
It's
But
also learning how to be critical, right? I think the
yeah,
issue is like, where are we starting to get our information from?
yeah,
I would say about 80% of the time it's social media or TikTok or I don't know, XYZ on the internet, or oh,
yeah.
my friend's tried this, or my friend's naturopath has told her that. So I think this is how currently within our society, people are getting their sources of information, especially when it comes to nutrition and lifestyle. When it comes to hormonal health, and maybe we can add that in the show notes, I can actually give you some excellent resources that you can share with your listeners as well, because there's some fantastic, again, medical doctors who are still ethical that are doing some fantastic work out there in terms
Hmm.
of breaking down all this jargon that we're not familiar with. So
Yes,
like
we were gonna link this in the show notes for
I'm
sure.
happy, as I said, I'm definitely happy to share a lot of these links and resources because they're also an excellent resource for me, just whether it's learning for my clients or even just, educating myself.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think one of the most important things as a dietitian is understanding, okay, so let's talk, within this age group of 40 to 50, let's say this is our age group.
Well, it
Um,
is mine since
what
June
are
this year, so
well, I'm just
woo
gonna say I'm 1 year away from 40, and I am also starting to notice all these changes too. So it really is about being mindful. Okay, during this time or during, within this transitional period, let's call it, what are the most important nutrients that I need to be mindful of? Number one is if I had to break your macros, like the ones that you need to be mindful of,
woo.
protein. Generally, I would say we do not meet our protein needs in general. And this is why we end up having an imbalance in our plate. So, like looking at the ratio of carbohydrates, protein to vegetables, i.e., fiber to fats. a lot of times we're actually not meeting our protein requirements. So for that age group, for that specific age group, I would say I even go a little bit higher in our protein requirements than the average. So I don't know if you've heard this before, when people tell you, okay, how much protein should I
Yeah,
need?
what's the
Should I be
formula?
exactly. Look, I mean, I would encourage you to work with a dietitian to help translate that into practical terms. Like, what does, 100 grams of protein per day look like for me? But I would say the average, if we had to look at, right, if you want to multiply your body weight in kilograms per day, initially for the general guide, for the general population, we'd say, okay, you multiply your weight in kilograms by 0.8 grams per kilograms per day to get your baseline protein requirements. Now, if I had to look at our age group, I would say multiply that your body weight in kilograms anywhere between 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram per day. So it is a higher range.
Yeah.
Why? Because I do want to encourage a muscle preservation, but also even muscle building, because that has an indirect effect on your metabolism too. So when people say, like, how do I increase your metabolism? I was like, well, build more muscle. So
Yeah.
make sure you are prioritizing protein. And again, I always talk about protein diversity. We do know, and that's the other thing, and you notice that with your grandparents or great grandparents, that as they age, they do lose muscle. They've got really, really skinny legs a lot of the times, or really, really skinny arms. So this is, I mean, with the estrogen loss that is happening, it can accelerate muscle loss. So this is why I would say definitely prioritize protein and keep it diverse. So if you do consume animal foods, then lean protein choices, I always go poultry, fish, seafood, and then look at your plant sources such as your legumes, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. Lots of nuts and seeds. So there's keep it diverse when it comes to your sources of protein. The next macro is healthy fats. Fats are extremely crucial for hormone production. And again, not to I don't know if you remember back in the day, and this is, going back years ago, is that there's this huge fear around fats. There
Oh,
still is,
there was light everything. Light
salad
yogurt,
dressing
light
on the
Kellogg's
side.
Special K's.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, it's really taking the fear out of fats and really
Hmm.
emphasizing that we do need a lot of anti-inflammatory fats, specifically those that are high in omega-3 fats, for example. So think of your fatty fish like salmon, trout, mackerel, and
Hmm.
sardines. Think flax seeds,
So we have a
walnuts.
good
So
excuse for avocado toast.
exactly. There you go, right? And avocado. So I think fats are also, because they're anti-inflammatory, we're looking at, again, inflammation is a big word, but it's really looking at how to counteract all these things that are going in our bodies. Inflammation is a part of it. Um, the other nutrient that, again, I know we can talk about for a whole episode separately, are carbohydrates, because,
Hmm.
there is evident carbophobia within our society, especially when it comes to weight management.
Yeah.
I think, again, at the end of the day, when it comes to carbohydrates, you need to look at your choice of carbs, and you need to match your carbs to your activity levels. And it's about being strategic with how much carbs should I be consuming per day based on how active I am. So a lot of times say, look, on the days where you're sedentary and not doing much, you should be eating differently than, the days where you are maybe training, strength training, or potentially need that extra boost because if you want to go for a run, go for a run. You're on your bike for a longer period of
Yeah.
time. So I think this is one thing that I notice, especially when women complain of fatigue and brain fog. A lot of them are either under fueling if they do exercise, so they are
Mm.
not consuming enough carbohydrates, or they've been extremely restrictive with their diets, very keto-like, I would say, and that contributes to these symptoms. So a
Mm.
lot of the times you fix the carb issue, you fix the energy and the fatigue and the brain fog issue.
Mm. Also going back to really educate yourself on the roles of each of these macros, especially the carbohydrates in your body, right? Like what purpose are they fulfilling? Quick energy boost, carbohydrates. More like if you
Focus. I was going to say, like,
Mhm.
when one question I do ask my clients whenever they hear carbohydrates, like, what keywords pop into your mind?
Mm.
First comes weight, automatically weight loss,
Hmm.
fat, belly fat. These are all the keywords that a lot of my clients have literally, it's just like an
Yeah, top of
automated
mind.
response.
Hmm.
And I was like, look, I want you to change that, because when you think of carbohydrates, I want you to think about performance. I want you to think about energy, focus, and fiber. This is how you should start thinking about your carbohydrates. So again, it's changing the narrative and taking the fear out of these nutrients. So these I would say would be, let's say, the macros, if you want to call them, but then we need to look at the vitamins and minerals that we need to be, again, mindful of during this transitional period. Calcium and vitamin D, two very important nutrients that we need to be mindful of. Yes, our calcium requirements might be a little bit higher, but again, it doesn't mean you need to jump on the supplement bandwagon. Absolutely not, because too much calcium is not good, especially when it comes to the heart. So this is where I
Oh,
would say
okay.
first policy. Um, when it comes to if you do consume dairy, I mean, that is a source of calcium, but we do know there's a lot of dairy alternatives that are fortified with the extra calcium that you need. But also there's a ton like your green leafy veg, almonds, sesame paste, or tahini. So having a nice varied diet can help you meet your requirements. And then when it comes to vitamin D levels, again, test and not guess. See where your vitamin D levels stand. So that's your sunshine vitamin, basically. And if you are not exposed to the sun, I would definitely recommend going on a low dose, again, based on what your levels are doing, because vitamin D can be stored in the liver. Everything goes through your liver. Think of your liver as a factory. So if you don't need a specific nutrient, you don't have to overload the system in it, with
Mm.
it, basically.
Mhm.
So vitamin D, I would say, in terms of, I mean, now what are we? It's almost in November. We're in Zurich,
Yeah.
barely
It's a
seeing the
great
sun.
fog weather,
Exactly.
so
I
yeah.
have not seen the sun except for like as it sets, basically, which is quite depressing.
Mm.
But we do know that we need to up our vitamin D intake during the
Mm.
darker months. So I would say a baseline of 800 to 1,000 international units per day could be kind of, again, a very, very rough estimate of how much you need up until, let's say, March, basically.
Yeah.
Again, vitamin D is extremely important for brain health, for muscle function, but also for our immune system too. So
Mhm.
these would be two nutrients to be mindful of. The other thing are your B vitamins. Your B vitamins are your energy vitamins. So they help extract energy from food, but also they're your mental health vitamins, which a lot of people don't even realize. So I always say a lot of your B vitamins are linked to mood. And energy. So if you are dealing with low energy levels, again, unexplained, if your doctor can tell you why, I would say, look, you can actually test all your vitamin D levels. You can get a panel done, just to see where they all stand. And again, keeping in mind food works in synergy too. So, B12, if you are vegan or vegetarian, be mindful of where your sources are coming from. So you might need to supplement there. The other thing that you need to be wary of is that you can over supplement. So something that we're seeing, especially with people who rely on a lot of supplements, is B6 toxicity. B6 is one of your
Oh.
B vitamins, so it's a neurological vitamin. But a lot of these perimenopause and menopausal, so let's say supplements, have added B6 into them way over the daily recommended value. So I have had to take my clients off certain supplements because they're just completely overloading the system with B6.
Okay,
And so,
what
yes,
does like B6
so
toxicity look
B6
like?
toxicity, I was going to say, in very, very extreme cases, you definitely will get nerve and neurological functions, misfunction. So basically, one
Oh.
of the symptoms is, again, it can indicate a deficiency of certain things. So for example, B12 deficiency. Sometimes people always complain of extreme fatigue, low energy levels, brain fog, but they will notice a tingling in their hands and their feet. I mean, I think a client of mine once described it as having a vibrator in her shoe. So this is what it
Oh,
always felt like.
yeah.
So
Ooh.
B6 toxicity has very similar symptoms as well. So you will notice that extreme tingling, numbness. So again, I would say before jumping on a supplement, look at your foods. If I had to pick four foods that contain different types of B vitamins, I would say include mushrooms, spinach, sunflower seeds, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. So your legumes at least 5 days a week. And that will cover your B vitamins. Now, except for B12, because B12 is only from animal sources. That's where you
Mm.
can get B12. So if you do consume a little bit of fish, eggs, dairy, you should be getting enough B12 from that perspective in poultry. So this is where I would say again, we've got calcium and vitamin D, we've got B vitamins, and then magnesium. Magnesium, again, you'll notice a lot of these perimenopause and menopause supplements will have magnesium added into them. And the rationale behind it is that, okay, magnesium helps with relaxation, especially relaxing your muscles, any muscle tension, but also can help regulate mood and bone health too. So this is where I would say, again, before jumping on the supplement bandwagon, are you having a nice variety of nuts and seeds and legumes? Because these are
Hmm.
your sources of magnesium as well. And if not, you need to work with your health professional to actually understand what is the right dosage for me. Is it 150 milligrams or is it 350? Because magnesium can also, because it's a relaxant, it can act as a laxative depending
Oh,
on what
makes sense. Yeah.
magnesium you're
Hmm.
taking.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, one of the different types of magnesium serve different purposes, and a type of magnesium is used for constipation.
Oh,
So
I remember when after pregnancy, when I had to take iron supplements, I had to take magnesium because the iron supplements,
there you go. Will cause
well,
concept. Exactly. So and this is where I say, look, everything goes hand in hand. And also your vitamin
mm,
D levels are influenced by magnesium levels too. So again, everything works in synergy.
hmm.
But the reason why I'm mentioning this, always prioritize a food first policy and
Hmm.
then be strategic with supplementation and supplement as needed based on your individual levels too.
Yeah. Is there a supplement that you would almost universally recommend?
Yes and no. I mean, right now I would say yes to vitamin D
Yeah.
during the winter months.
Yeah.
Um, Again, supplements serve like nutrients serve
Hmm.
different purposes. I mean, like again, if we're looking at immunity, especially during the winter time, again, depending on which time zone you live in, I would say, okay, it could be worthwhile if you do not consume, let's say, fruits high in vitamin C to go on a vitamin C supplement during this time.
Yeah.
Check your zinc levels. Zinc is extremely important for immune health. So if your zinc levels are low, potentially supplement during the winter months as
Mm.
well to help support your
Yeah.
immune system. So this is why I would say yes and no. I'm not a fan of just jumping on the supplement bandwagon because it's
Hmm.
sexy and trendy and it looks cool, having a nice selection of supplements like in your pantry. A lot of people rave about it as well.
Yeah,
So this
true.
is why, you know what I mean? It's
I
it,
yeah, yeah. No, I
it
feel
can get
you.
confusing.
I feel you. I totally feel you. I polled this I invited you back because a lot of this mirrors a lot of conversation I had in my DMs when I once asked, okay, what topic should I cover on the CD Grad podcast next? And they were like, oh, perimenopause, like, what's going on? Female health, blah blah blah. And one question that came up was too, it was all this kind of like the changes in like skin elasticity, if you want, right? Like the other big buzzword I feel that's right now, it's very going strong is collagen.
Collagen.
What can we do to like not need Botox or like
I
what is
mean,
the buzz behind collagen? Like, do we need to supplement this? Like, what's going on?
look, in a nutshell, I would say again, yes and no. We do produce less and less collagen. I'm trying to be very Swiss about this.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I was
Like,
gonna say,
just be
look, we do
you.
produce less and less collagen as we age.
Hmm.
Does it make sense to have a collagen supplement daily? I would say again, yes and no, depending on your finances. If you do have some spare cash that you don't, you're happy to kind of
You don't know
splurge
what
on.
else to do with it.
Exactly.
Go,
Then
go.
yes, you can definitely jump on a collagen supplement, but you need to be very wary about the quality. So there is again without I don't want to mention any specific brands, but yes, I am very picky when it comes to collagen supplements, and there's potentially only one brand that I work with because it's been tested, high quality collagen supplement. And again, this is anecdotal, but I have seen it work with my clients. Now, why do I use collagen? The only time, to be honest with you, that I have used collagen within my practice is for anyone that is going through recovery after an orthopedic injury. So potentially after
Oh.
shoulder surgery, or they've had some sort of sport injury. I do notice that I'm not going to say it speeds up recovery, but potentially it does. So we do notice whether it's athletes or just the recreational, average Joe or
Hmm.
Jane, um, get back quicker to their regular, let's say, training routine. Um, again, it goes back to, are you getting enough protein from food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to, if at any point before jumping on the collagen bandwagon, just make sure you are prioritizing where your protein comes from. And then if you have the extra spare cash, by all means, go for a collagen supplement. What are the side effects of taking, a good quality collagen supplement? You do notice better skin. You do notice stronger hair and nails. And for anyone, let's say again, within that age group, if we're looking at bone health or joint health, there is some good quality research there looking at joint health and improving it. So again, collagen is one, I don't want to badmouth it because there is
Mm-hmm.
some decent science out there. But again, it really comes down to the actual brand because,
Mm-hmm.
it can be
Yeah.
extremely high in heavy metals.
Mm.
There is no potentially such thing as vegan collagen at this point. I know there's going to be lab manufactured vegan collagen because when you look at where your collagen comes from, it either comes from, especially from a supplement perspective, bovine, so your cattle or marine sources.
Mm.
So this is where the source of collagen comes from in most
Yeah.
supplements.
Is this brings us into, I don't know, it's a detour, but this brings us into the whole, now you give me the eye roll. I know, in the whole like bone broth
I'm
cult.
scared. No, but I mean, look, bone broth is more of a cultural thing. It's quite comforting. There's nothing wrong with it.
Hmm.
But yes, there
Hmm.
are certain circumstances where you need to be very, very mindful because using bones and marrow, etc., you can, if you do consume them very, very frequently, it can backfire purely because of the heavy metal content in them, especially looking at lead, for example. So this is what I
Mm.
would say all within reason. Too much of a good thing can actually be bad.
Yeah.
So I'm not, again, I don't want to nitpick and badmouth all these things, but you need to know that food works in synergy. You can't just say like bone broth is a miracle food.
Hmm.
It is absolutely not. It is very big in certain cultures. I mean, who wouldn't like a broth if you're not feeling well
Oh
or if you've
yeah. I
got an
mean,
upset
it's
tummy?
I know my grandma used to make one with bone marrow, and
Same.
it was like very comforting.
Very
Like,
comforting. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I just think, don't over sensationalize certain
mm,
foods.
yeah.
Because I don't think, and I not don't think, I know that the science really doesn't back it up.
Okay. That was just kind of detour. I want to go back to what you said before, like the whole test, not guess, theme. And it really brings us back to, we've covered a lot of things, a lot of symptoms, a lot of things you can generally do, like watch your macros and things like that, like your
The other thing,
lifestyle.
hold on, before cutting
So,
you off, actually,
yes,
talk
go.
about macros. I was like, hey, I talk about poo for a living. I mean, gut health is at the center of what I do. Fiber. You need to find the right amount of fiber for you that works for you and works for your gut health. But also, you will
Mm,
notice that you will need to change and adapt depending on what you're experiencing. I mean, look, we all experience gut turbulences throughout our cycle. And this is
yeah.
where you need to adjust. A very, very simple example, let's say during PMS or that end of that luteal phase right before your period, a lot of women complain, I'm constipated. So this has to do with progesterone's role basically as it declines and causing a sluggish gut. So potentially during that period you need to up your fiber intake a little bit, maybe add some ground flaxseed, maybe have your kiwi fruit every day. And then for some women, as soon as their period arrives, they just switch to diarrhea and lose stool. So this is where again you might need to be mindful of the different types of fiber that you're consuming. The
Mm,
reason why I'm highlighting fiber so much because fiber nourishes your inner ecosystem, so your gut microbiome. And we are starting to see this gut hormone connection. So there's this whole collection of microbes called the estrobolome that we're starting to learn more about. And we're starting to look at, hold on, do you actually play a role in metabolizing estrogen or breaking it down or recycling, etc.? So what we know is we want to nourish that inner ecosystem. So this is where fiber comes to play or the power of 30. So making sure you're including 30 plant ingredients per week. This is where I come in as a gut health specialist dietitian is I do help people again translate how do I get this 30 in because it can be very, very overwhelming for
mm-hmm.
people, especially those who really want to eat
It sounds
seasonal.
like a lot, like 30.
Exactly, but it's not. I mean, if you use a nut and seed mix, you can easily get 5 to 6 points right there in 1 tablespoon. So there's a
Mm,
lot of things that you can do, a rule of thumb, just At least one meal a day. Make sure you've got three different types of vegetables.
Mm.
Make sure that you've got 1 to 2 handfuls of veg at mealtime. So there's a lot of different ways that you can implement these tactics or these hacks, if you want to call them, not to overwhelm the system and just, and then obviously there's a lot of guilt associated if I don't meet this or it's really hard to meet that. Again, you need to find ways to make these recommendations work for your reality.
Yeah. And don't, and how to not go on the guilt bandwagon. Like, we don't want to guilt, we don't want shame. It's not helping us.
Absolutely. It's just going to backfire. I always say it's
Yeah.
wasted energy. Absolute waste of energy.
Big time. Thank you for that cutting in.
No worries. Please
No,
proceed.
I thought like we went like what 30 minutes without Sandra talking about poo. Like, what's going
I
on?
know, I know. This is just like quite shocking. It's just like, and it's how do you say? It's like just this built-in
Yes,
thing that I
yes.
need to
And
bring.
I see it. It had to go. It had to go out. It had to like just. It was bubbling up. The whole test, not gas. I think this brings us to another, I think, important part that we briefly covered at the beginning. Like, there's a lot of like female women's health is under researched. It's also really hard to advocate for your health because a lot of doctors, I don't know, when they went to school, that was not part of the curriculum. Um, and we're at this age where we should get regular blood work.
Well,
But
again, it depends how regular. So
yeah,
ideally,
like
I was going to say the rule of thumb is once a year.
yeah,
Okay, rule of thumb once a year. Just
makes
there's a
sense.
whole panel that I advise my clients to get either through their GPs, and there's some great GPs out there. You just need to find the good doctors out there and build your team, or through labs that pretend, for example, I directly work with. So there's like this panel that you should be getting with the basics once a year. Then we kind of take it one step further. If you have had a history of certain deficiencies, it's always good to maybe get them checked once every 6 months just to make sure that your levels are within range. So this is kind of the general rule of thumb, but then there's a whole other, this whole world of testing can also be quite overwhelming, especially when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
hormones. Now, I am not the one, I'm not the expert at all when it comes to hormonal tests, etc. Again, that's your gynecologist and endocrinologist. But there's a ton of these tests that you can do at home. And these are the ones that I would advise against because they are confusing. They are going to drag you down a rabbit hole of absolute misinformation. And anyone selling these at-home tests, guaranteed, are going to sell you a supplement to balance your hormones. This is an absolute guarantee. So
Yeah.
one of the most common confusing tests out there, and maybe I'm actually going to link up a really good review about it. I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's about this Dutch test. So the Dutch test is an acronym for, I think it's dried urine test for comprehensive hormone. So this whole hormonal panel, you get to, it's a urine test over a 2-day period. And it tests the metabolites of these specific hormones. And actually, in clinical practice, there is no such thing as looking at the metabolites, which is like the broken down elements,
Okay.
of these specific
Oh,
hormonal panels.
weird.
Now, there is a lot of controversy and a lot of rebuttal, especially when it comes to the companies that have created these tests as well. But I would say, and maybe this is just a quick shout out to Dr. Jen Gunter, who I think is an absolute fantastic,
She's
how do you
brilliant.
say, no
Also
fucks given,
politically,
really,
and yeah,
exactly.
she's like she's on the right side
um,
of history.
she is she's someone that will bust all the amount of misinformation out there, especially when it comes to female health and hormonal health. So I would, as I said, when it comes to these hormone tests, be very, very wary, because there to date, from a clinical and in clinical practice, we don't, I mean, that's the same thing in nutrition. You'll get a lot of these at-home food intolerance tests, etc. So anyone promoting these tests are a red flag. So
Noted.
this is, I was going to say, if someone is promoting the Dutch test, and actually you'll be surprised, some dietitians do, even some doctors do. Anyone with a that's the thing. People are so confused. They're like, but I thought you people are accredited. You guys have some sort of ethical standards. Some people, fuck the ethics. I can make money out of it.
Mm,
So this is the issue that we're falling into.
mm,
My role is to really educate and empower people to help them navigate this world of misinformation. And I always say, be critical and even question me, question my advice. You're entitled to question someone.
hmm
So don't just, always take things with a grain of salt. But if something sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So this is another thing, maybe that
Yeah.
takes us to the topic of how can I spot a quack online?
Yeah. What are the red
So
flags of
red
like
flags. So I
snakes,
said, as I
snakes
said,
or salespeople?
selling you some, at-home test to do, whether it's a food intolerance test or a hormone test. If they're overusing the word cleanse and detox, so that is definitely another,
Oh yeah,
I would say,
that's a
red
no for me.
flag.
That's I'm like, yep, I'm out.
Fear, I was going to say the other thing is fear-based marketing. A
Hmm.
lot of these fear-mongering messages, because they're going to offer you a safe alternative afterwards. They're going to offer you the natural way to do it, and we do see that within the realm of hormone health too.
Hmm.
Um,
Or the one
using
thing to, there's always also like a red
exactly.
flag, the one thing to lose belly fat or something. There's never one thing.
And I might get a lot of hate for this, but if anyone starts to, okay, a few things. Maybe I was going to say a few keywords. Holistic is one, because I don't need to mention that I don't have to rave about we are holistic in nature as health practitioners as well. I mean, doctors should be
This should be
holistic as well. This
our
is
basic
our
procedure, our standard
Exactly.
operation.
So
It's
within the medical field, because I do come from that medical field, is we are holistic in nature. I'm not going to sit there and rave about it. Functional is another word or keyword.
oh,
The
functional
root,
medicine. Yes, that's
no,
a big buzzy thing.
I was going to say functional medicine, but again, it ties into this whole the root cause. If anyone puts that somewhere, please run away or just swipe next. So these tend to be certain keywords to kind of just be a little bit mindful of. Anyone that's got any celebrity endorsements, using a lot of testimonials, actually, because I am still regulated by a board, so like I'm accredited in Australia by Dietitians Australia, we're actually not allowed to use testimonials. So within
Mm,
our code of conduct, we cannot use testimonials. So this is where you'll notice a lot of these supplements will use testimonials instead of
yeah,
clinical evidence. But then even when you look at the evidence, it's either, you know, on
yeah.
test tubes, or I think we're talking about,
Lab
done
rats.
on exactly lab rats or
Yeah,
animal studies, or
yeah,
even if it's done on humans, again, you need to look at the quality of the research. Now, the general
yeah.
public do not
But
know
yeah,
epidemiology. They don't know how to
yeah,
decipher
which is
clinical
okay,
studies.
right? It's which is okay. But I want
Absolutely.
to tie in here because you like said it too fast, and I want people to understand because it's not just medical. It goes for online coaching, it goes for life coaching, it goes for all the shit.
Yeah.
The use of testimonials, the quantity of testimonials and its purpose is to suggest a legitimate, like to be legit in
Legitimate. Yeah.
quantity,
Yeah.
right? They're taking what they experienced on their body, in their life, on their money mindset, blah blah blah, and try to make it from one body to everybody by the use of like a gazillion of testimonials, but lack any scientific relevance. So rant over. So that's why you
Yeah, but
see.
that's exactly, absolutely. And I back you up 100%. This is why you will not see testimonials on our website. I'm not allowed to use them, but I'm not going to say I don't see the value in them. Obviously, it's like, I do want people to rate and
Yeah,
review us. So they publicly do that. And I don't clearly have control over what they say. So this is where I would say just be mindful of the placement of these
yeah,
testimonials. And you'll notice, oh, they've got like 4,000 reviews. But what does that mean?
yeah, yeah. 100%. Like I love a good story, and I love when someone had success with what they're doing when they heard something on a podcast or they were working with me or whatever. And this is cool, but I'm never using it as a from a like, oh, she achieved this. Well, just because of me anyway, right? And
Hmm.
no, to know like doing on her own, but and then she did it, so you can too. And it's just like, nah, no,
Hmm.
no. But uh, do we have more red flags? I feel one of my biggest red flags when it comes to like, do I need to like watch this TikTok or just scroll by is anyone who calls themselves king or queen of something. That I'm like, God, dear Lord, like just
Or
like,
goddess?
yes, goddess. We're looking at you, glucose goddess.
Exactly. Again, I don't, sometimes I know we laugh about it, but trust your gut. If you have any sort of little tingling in your gut going, Not quite sure about that. Trust it. That first instinct, it's right.
Yes, it always is. So whenever, yeah, and maybe just sometimes you need to really pause a moment. So before you like try to Apple Pay your way to the next like supplement, just pause. Or delete Apple Pay from your phone. So you actually have
Or
to
do that.
go
I
get your
was just about
credit
to say
card.
that. Just
Yeah, it's just you
delete
actually have to
Apple
go
Pay.
get your credit card, and then when you're back, you're like, no, wait, breathe. I don't actually need this shit.
Absolutely. Look, I'm 100% with you. You need to know that social media is curated, especially, I mean, nowadays, not just social, but every like this whole
Mhm.
world of marketing is curated to take
Yeah.
advantage of your searches, your vulnerabilities, what, uncertainty. And again, being female with all the hormonal fluctuations that we are meant to go through. Again, again, another maybe red flag, and we can potentially wrap the red flags up, is hormone balance. Yes, you will notice or balance your
Mm.
hormones. I mean,
Hmm.
again, why, what are we trying to balance here, and why? I think it comes down to that level of fluctuation that we're looking into. If there are any certain hormonal imbalances that, if we're looking at thyroid issues, if we're looking at PCOS, endometriosis, yes, these are examples of which there are, that level of fluctuation is way over and we need to look into it more.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, our hormones are meant to
You're so
fluctuate.
they're designed to fluctuate.
Exactly. They're dancing, it's an intricate dance. And I always say it's just that level of how off that dance is, we need to investigate and look into it a little bit more.
Hmm.
So just be mindful of all these trending words and trending keywords, because at the end of the day, when you scroll down, they are going to sell you something.
Yeah. Always follow the money. Yeah. Right. It always comes down to this. Like, think about who is profiting of you feeling bad and sorry for your body. And if it's something that, like, if you feel concerned about your lack of sleep or your, I don't know, loss of skin elasticity or
Mhm.
whatever, that's legit if you feel concerned about it. But always ask yourself if the concern is truly yours or if it has kind of like been instilled in you,
Exactly. Couldn't agree
right?
more.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, Sandra, thank you so much for ranting with all of us and
I kept it
educating our story
relatively
us.
clean. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
gonna say I think
yeah.
I kept it
Yeah, it's okay.
relatively
We didn't
clean
need the
because
headphones. Yeah, it's okay. No
no.
PTR rating.
Thank you so much for bringing me on, though.
Where can people find you when they want to hear more of you? Tell us.
The easiest would be the website. So that's nutrition-az.com. I am on Instagram, although again, I have a love-hate relationship with social media. So that's Nutrition A to Z by Sandra Mikhail. I also have a podcast, which I co-host with my dad. So that's the gastroenterologist and his daughter, which we launched last year. And LinkedIn, I would say this is probably, oh, and the book. I'm so bad. So I did launch a book last year.
Woo!
So, if you are
Gonna
confused,
link it in the show
I was gonna
notes.
say, if you are confused about gut health and want to learn about, the 7 most common gut conditions people struggle with, and breaking the taboo around poo, then grab a copy. But
And it has
that's
the best intro into a book ever.
thank you for that. I
Spoiler.
was gonna say
Teaser.
spoiler.
Spoiler. No, I'm
We'll
not
keep
gonna
it moving.
tell.
I
You
like
gotta buy the
that.
book. We're gonna link it in the show notes. And speaking of books, I always have one last question before I let anyone off the hook. What book are you currently reading or what audiobook you're listening to?
I just finished Matt Haig's The Life Impossible.
Oh,
I loved it. Very, very different from his usual books. I mean, he's the author of The Midnight Library, which is also
yeah,
one of my favorite
which I
books out
like.
there.
Yeah.
So The Life Impossible, I mean, I finished it within a couple of weeks. And that's
Whoa,
such a good
okay.
hit. I know. I'm on the
Ooh,
well, one of my
okay.
goals for this year is to have, finish one book a month, and I'm on a roll.
Yay, go you. I'm not maybe I'm like a book every 2 months. That's kind of like currently my speed, but it's not about speed.
Exactly. I was just about to say
So,
that.
so Sandra, thank you so much for being on
Thank
this
you
unique ride with me.
again.